in this video, I'm going to walk you through my thought process when I'm converting a recipe, especially those wonderful family recipes, to freshly milled wheat, so I no longer have to use store-bought flour. And then after that, I'm going to share with you guys another family recipe of a wonderful summery dessert. Perfect for those summer picnics, 4th of July, or just anytime you want a fresh dessert that's not hot and super easy to make. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and today is going to be an interesting video. I look like a hot mess because I have been baking a lot of bread today. We actually have a little farm swap thing tomorrow that I'm baking bread. We are also going over to someone's house for supper, and I'm making dessert. So the dessert that I'm actually going to be making tomorrow is a dessert that my husband's mother made growing up. It doesn't really have a name. They called it the green bowl dessert because she always put it in a big green bowl. But it is a wonderful summery dessert, perfect if you have any plans for 4th of July parties or picnics or just really any summertime activity, because it involves fresh fruit that is in season right now, and it's just a really light and easy dessert to make. But first of all, with that dessert, it contains pound cake, and I'm wanting to experiment with a family recipe that I was given by my cousin and my aunt for a pound cake that they swear is really, really good, but I want to convert it using freshly milled wheat. So in this video, I'm actually going to walk you through my thought process of this. I was considering to experiment with the pound cake first and then share it with you guys, but I think it's important for you to also see the process of converting a recipe. So those wonderful family recipes that you have, you'll know how to convert them as well. Now, do know that whenever it comes to converting recipes, if you're new to freshly milled grains or freshly milled wheat, this can be a bit daunting of a task because you will notice that it kind of acts differently and you have to make adjustments. Usually when I was first starting with freshly milled grains, I would usually do a recipe first with store-bought flour if I was completely unfamiliar with how it should look like, what it should taste like, everything like that. And that's fine if you would like to do that. And then I would experiment with freshly milled grains. However, I've been doing this for 9 years and my confidence has increased a bit. So we're just gonna jump right into it and see how it turns out. So as you can see, this is the recipe that I'm going to be using, and it is a very well-loved recipe. But you know it's gonna be good when it looks like that. Before we get started, question of the day. What is your favorite dessert? Are there any family recipes in your family that is a family favorite? Please comment below because I would love to hear about it. On this channel, I upload videos every week teaching you and helping you to feed your families with healthy whole grains, an emphasis on freshly milled at home, but whole grains in general. We also talk about the importance of storing whole grains, all the things dealing with whole grains. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, be sure to hit that subscribe button below and hit that like button if you love yummy desserts. All right, so we're gonna move this camera to my kitchen and let's get started. So first off, we're gonna make the pound cake. And again, I'm gonna walk you through my thought process. So here's my handy dandy little recipe that I've copied. And now I'm gonna show you just how I modified what's my thought process. To start off with, everything mentioned, including the recipe, a lot of the tools I use, including my grain mill, where I buy my grains, all the things are in the description box below. So be sure to check that out. Also, if you have any questions about converting recipes yourself, comment below and I'll certainly do my best to answer you. Okay, so now just to run through the ingredient list. First up we have is sugar. Now, here's how I usually always start to convert the recipe. Is a lot of recipes for us contain way more sugar than we like to include. So the original recipe calls for 3 cups of sugar. I'm actually gonna back that down to about 2 cups of sugar. And you know, we can see how it goes from there. I can taste the batter to see if I want it more sweet. You can always add sugar. You can't take it away. So the sugar that I'm using is just your regular cane sugar. I do like to buy an organic cane sugar. Then we also have ingredients that you need to make sure are at room temperature. So we have 8 ounces of cream cheese, 3 sticks of butter. Now, as you can see, the original recipe calls for oleo, whoever uses that anymore. We're gonna be using the real stuff, and that would be butter. Then we also need 6 eggs, again at room temperature. These are from my wonderful chickens, and they're so pretty. And then the original recipe calls for 3 cups of flour. Now, specifically, white lily flour. Fun fact, a little history here about why so many recipes like your biscuits, cakes call for white lily flour. And if you've seen my video about the different types of grains and how to use them, I'll link that here for you. Different grains do different things. The reason why so many recipes call for white lily flour when they're wanting the lightest is because if you actually turn it around, on the back of white lily flour, it is using soft white wheat flour, where your all-purpose flours are generally using a hard flour, a hard red or a hard white. Bread flour uses a hard white wheat, and those are not light enough. They have a higher protein content, so they're great for making breads, yeast breads, but they're not as light as you want for your biscuits, your cakes, your pound cake, things like that. So that's why a lot of those recipes call for white lily flour, and if you see that, you will know that it's asking for soft white wheat flour, which I have milled here. Now, if you do not like to use soft white wheat flour, substitutions that you can use for soft white wheat flour, you can use some of the ancient grains such as spelt. Spelt is still quite light and works well with your lighter baked goods. I haven't used it for biscuits yet, but I have used it in muffins. I've had spelt pancakes and they're wonderful, still a lighter flavor and texture. I've also been told that camus or kamut, however you pronounce it, is a lighter flour as well. So definitely experiment with those, but we're gonna make it easier on ourselves today and use soft white wheat flour, which I have milled here. Now, one rule of thumb that you need to keep in mind when you are trying to convert a recipe that calls for a lighter flour and you're wanting to use a soft white wheat flour. A general rule of thumb is for every 2 to 3 cups of all-purpose flour that the recipe calls for, you will want to increase your soft white wheat by about a half a cup. I would probably start with a 1/4 cup to start off with. Again, you can always add, you can't take away. So that's what we're going to do today. One thing I did forget to mention is vanilla extract. You will need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Okay, so now we're going to mix all these up. It's pretty simple, kind of a dump and go. I am just gonna use my hand mixer. I know that I usually use a Bosch, but this is kind of a smaller recipe. I like to use my Bosch for larger recipes. If you have a stand mixer, feel free to use it, but I'm just gonna use slightly old-fashioned way of the stand mixer. All right, so let's start whipping this together. All right, so like any real old family recipe, there's like no directions. I'm lucky to have gotten a cooking time. Thankfully, I have at least baked before. And so we are gonna start with just creaming together our butter and our cream cheese. All right, that looks nice and creamed. And now I'm gonna crack my eggs open. If you're watching this, if I include this, if you're wondering why in the world am I doing 1 egg at a time, that's because these are straight from the chicken outside, and you know, you just never know if you grabbed an old egg. So instead of ruining the entire recipe, I just crack one at a time and add it in. So again, we need 6 eggs. All right, and again, make sure that your eggs, your butter, and your cream cheese are all room temperature. What happens if you add in your eggs and if they're cold, they can start curdling that butter and cream cheese up and it makes it look a little lumpy. So that's why when it says room temperature, that's generally why it's doing that. And if you've ever made that mistake before, you know. And once again, we have incorporated all of that. It's nice and smooth. One great thing about this recipe, and perfect for summertime, is that this is a wonderful recipe, both pound cake and the dessert that I will be showing you later, for your children to help you with. So if your children love to be in the kitchen with you, this is perfect because it's pretty much a dump and go. As long as you mix it well, you know, you're doing pretty good. Okay, and now we're just gonna add our sugar. Again, I'm just using 2 cups. The recipe calls for 3 cups. So if you really have a sweet tooth, feel free to do the full 3 cups. Now, one thing is whenever you back off on the sugar in certain baked goods, sometimes that can actually mess up the ratio of things and either it be too gooey or it just not stick together. So be careful when you do that. I never go less than half usually. And again, if I do half and say, you know, that's not looking right, I add some sugar back in. I know cookies can be a little sensitive to that. Just kind of work with what you have. But again, calls for 3, we're doing 2/3 of that, so we're doing 2 cups. All right, so once again, nice and smooth. I probably could have combined the sugar and the flour at the same time, but you know, I kind of didn't think about I'm running out of bowls. And I don't feel like washing a ton. Okay, so now we're just gonna add the flour. Again, it calls for 3 cups of flour, but since I'm using soft white wheat, I'm going to add an extra 1/4 of a cup roughly. I'm gonna kind of eyeball it and then go from there. If I need to add some more, like if it's way too gooey or anything like that, I can always add some more. Again, you can't take away what you've already added. And I have not sifted this or anything. I know if you've watched my biscuit recipe, I do sift the flour to get a lighter biscuit. And you can certainly do that. Feel free to experiment. But today I'm not gonna do that because a pound cake is already kind of a little dense anyway. And especially this one with the dessert that it's going in, not gonna matter too much. So I'm not gonna bother sifting it. And we are gonna add this a little bit at a time. And 2, and if you notice, I always just kind of shake it and eyeball it to get it level. You can feel free to use, you know, the knife thing, but I just kind of eyeball it. And again, full recipe and a lot of the tools that I use, description box below. All right, that is definitely getting quite the thick batter here. The beauty of cooking with whole grains, especially freshly milled wheat, is after you do it a long time, again, I've been doing mine for 9 years, you should kind of start getting the feel for things and having an instinct. So in saying that, I'm actually not going to add an extra 1/4 cup or any extra flour at all. I'm gonna stick with the 3 cups because this is looking, in my opinion, okay. After I bake it, I'll let you know, but it is still pretty stiff. I mean, you can see it's kind of, it's fairly stiff. So, I mean, it has a ton of cream cheese and butter in it. So I expect it to be a thick batter, not super light like a cake. So I'm actually gonna leave it, and now let's add our vanilla. We need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now we're just gonna mix all this up until it's smooth and I know everything has been incorporated. Okay, I think that's gonna be good. Now, one thing to see, I'd like to show you this batter, but you can see that it's fairly smooth, but there's just these slight teeny bitty little bumps, I guess, for lack of a better word. Again, I'm not sure if you can see that, so I will try to zoom in. That's generally from the bran from the wheat, the bran and the germ from the wheat. That's usually normal for me to see. If I'd sifted it, I would see less of that, but it would be there. So don't expect this to be that smooth, glossy type look that you get when you use all-purpose flour or the whatever flour from the store. So again, it looks like it has just this slight graininess to it, even though it doesn't taste like, you don't taste like there's grain or sandy bits, you know, in it. So just a heads up with that. But otherwise, this looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna taste it to make sure the sugar content will be good. Oh, this is gonna be good. Oh yeah, best part of baking is licking the spoons and eating the raw cookie dough. And don't tell me that you don't like it, because there ain't a single person on this planet that doesn't like it, even though the doctors tell us not to eat raw cookie dough. Oh, come on. Stop stealing the joys of life from us. All right, but my kids will be thrilled. I will let them come in and lick the bowl and all that stuff, and practically wouldn't have to wash dishes unless, except all the germs from them licking the bowl and everything. Okay, so this looks, again, this looks good, and it's a pretty big batter, so I'm gonna grab one of my biggest loaf pans. And all that you need to do is, once it's done, we're gonna put it in a cold oven. Heat it to 300 degrees for about 1.5 hours. Now, one thing to know, and one thing I highly recommend, is if you notice that your oven tends to bake hotter, or maybe you're just wondering if it's getting the correct temperature, I highly recommend a oven thermometer. I have one, and I will certainly link it below, that I got off of Amazon, that just hangs on my rack in my oven. It is wonderful because I did suspect that my oven was a lot hotter, and it was. So I was kind of overcooking things until I realized that. So mine actually will not. Now I do have a propane oven. Electric, probably gonna be better, and your really nice propane or gas ovens are probably gonna do better as well. Mine's not super fancy, so we're just gonna go with what I've got. So that means for me to maintain 300 degrees, I will have to periodically check it and possibly even open the door a bit, stick a towel in to regulate that. But that's why I have that oven thermometer in there, so I can see that. So be sure to check that. So for me, I'm gonna be checking on this cake in about an hour, and then an hour and 10 minutes to see where it's at. All right, but first off, we need to put it in the pans. Now this looks like a lot of dough, like bigger than my large yeast bread recipes, which this is my normal bread pan that I have. I'm thinking I need a bit bigger, so I'm gonna use my behemoth. This is a Paula Deen one. As you can see, this one kind of fits right in it to give it a little bit of extra room, because as with all cakes, even with a pound cake, it is gonna rise a little bit, so you need to keep that in mind. So let's grease this up, put this in, and put it in that oven. Oh yeah, that filled it up. You can see how full it is. Hopefully you can see. And this is a 9x5 pan, but I do think it is a bit higher. Well, obviously it's a bit higher than my normal loaf pan. So make sure you get one. This one looks like about 3 inches high. It's a Paula Deen one. If I can find it, I'll link it below. But bottom line, watch your pans, because this also says 9x5. This is 9x5, but obviously a bit taller, and it filled it up really well, and it's even gonna rise a little bit from that. So let's get it in the oven, and I will see you back here when this is done. All right, and here we are, it is done. Couple things, I think it looks a bit darker on camera. The lighting isn't that great, but it did get a little bit dark, especially on the bottom. I did spray down the pan, but this side isn't as bad, so I don't know what was going on there. It took forever to cook. I think I was a little paranoid of burning it, and I kept checking it a lot, especially to make sure my temperature is right. So might not need to do that as much next time, so we can just rest and cook, except just checking my temperature. But now let's see how it looks on the inside and how it tastes. So got my bread knife. I'm most concerned about how it is on the middle. Okay, so that looks good, and it's moist, kind of crunchy on the crust, but now I'm gonna try the inside. All right, yep, as I suspected, it is doughy. Right there in the middle, and I always have trouble with really thick bread. You can see how tall and thick it is, and it is doughy in the middle, but I think it's just a small section here. So I think I'm gonna be able to use the outside pieces and all that around it, but let's see how it tastes. There we go. Yeah, it has a really good flavor on it. Now let me give some to my husband and see what he thinks. All right, so husband verdict is in. He did confirm definitely that the bottom is a little bit on, not the burn side, but just overdone a bit more. But he did really like the top part, and even on the ends, you can tell it's just like slightly underdone, but not too bad. When I tried to take the rest of the piece away, he wouldn't let me. So he's eating that right now. So it could have been that bad if he's still eating it. But what I'm gonna do for this dessert is, thankfully, the dessert that I'm about to show you does require you to cut up a pound cake anyway. So I think I'm still gonna try this and salvage it for the dessert that I'm about to show you, which we're gonna be doing right now. All right, y'all, now my favorite part, to show you this wonderful, awesome dessert that is another family recipe. So the first one was from my side of the family, which I know the recipe is a lot better. You know, I just kind of goofed this time. It's a learning experience, and don't ever let that deter you, because you're gonna fail sometimes when you cook and bake. It's just part of life. Learn from it and move on. What I've learned for this one is that it does actually need to cook a lot longer, but just so long as I monitor that bake time, so long as I monitor the cooking temperature, it still needs that good hour and a half to cook. Now, one thing I didn't mention with the pound cake is that I did let it rest in the pan for about 10 minutes, took it out of the pan and let it really rest until it was fairly cooled off. This is kind of room temperature. I would say, I mean, it's slightly above that. So do know that. But bottom line is, what really got me was just the bake time. I just didn't bake it long enough. I did have to remove about maybe a little under a third of it, but good news, my chickens will be very thrilled to have the parts. What I went ahead and did is I went ahead and cut off the bit of the crust on the bottom, the ones that were a little bit more than I wanted, and this is what I have left, which is a good amount of what I need for this dessert. And again, even though I failed, I can still use it. It is still usable in this dessert. So let's get started. Now, the name for this dessert, my husband and my in-laws always called it, was the green bowl dessert, because my husband's mother, when she made it, would just put it in this big green bowl. So it was called the big green bowl dessert. I have yet to really come up with a name for it. I'm thinking Summer Delight, or Summer Berry Delight, or Berry Summer Delight. Comment below and let me know if you have a name or which one of those names you think this dessert should be called. Here's what you're going to need. First of all, you need a big bowl. Then you need your pound cake. I have done this before where I have bought pound cake from the store. If I didn't have time, it's okay, but you need just a regular vanilla pound cake. You also need some vanilla pudding. I actually made this myself. A little tip, my pudding recipe is actually the same that I do for my banana pudding, which the recipe I do for that is on the back of the box of the Nabisco vanilla wafers. So there you go. Now this is a double recipe of that banana pudding, but if you make it from scratch, that's an excellent one to use. So we have vanilla pudding. You can buy it store-bought. You can make it from a box, whatever you're wanting to do, whatever you like to do. You need vanilla pudding, a little over 4 cups it looks like. Pound cake. You need an entire tub of Cool Whip, or make your own whipping cream. You need about 2 pints of blueberries and about 4 cups of strawberries. These are ones that I had frozen, which if you saw my muffin video, I like to go ahead and dice them up and freeze them. So these are 4 cups of thawed out strawberries, which is perfect, as you'll see later, because it has all this wonderful juice in it. And that's gonna really get into the pound cake, and you'll see. Now you can always do more fruit. Feel free to experiment and add more fruits. This is just traditionally what was done. So let's assemble. This is a great recipe if you have children who want to help you, because this is a very simple one to do. So you start with empty bowl and you start putting your pound cake in the bottom, however you want to do it. It just kind of needs to cover the bottom a bit. Feel free to, if you need to, break it apart a bit. All right, there you go. Just kind of covering that bottom. Then we add some pudding, just a good layer of this. And you can really make this a beautiful looking dessert. I like putting it in glass bowls because you get to see all the cool layers. If you have one of those trifle bowls, I know the Pampered Chef sold one, I used to have one. Those look really good with this type of dessert. And this is an excellent dessert to bring to potlucks, you know, family gatherings. You're going over to someone's house for supper and you're the one bringing dessert. Because again, in the summertime, it's wonderful and summery. It's light, and my husband, oh man, he loves this dessert. Okay, so I've put a good amount of pudding on. Oh, I'm gonna put a little bit more. There's some exposed. It's about half the pudding, because we're gonna be putting 2 layers. All right, pudding, you can kind of see it right there. And now let's start adding our berries. So basically, the reason why I got 2 of these, pretty simple. I put pretty much an entire one on this layer. Oh my, it's gonna be good. Yeah, let's put some more. All right, and then in a whole bag, so 2 cups of the diced up strawberries. And I love it how it has this juice, because that's gonna get in there, and that pound cake's gonna soak it all up. Gonna be so good. And I am making this the night before. I do recommend you make it the night before so everything can kind of soak in and incorporate. Okay, so we've done pound cake, banana pudding, the fruit. Now we're just gonna repeat. So more pound cake. You can see that, more pound cake. I'm gonna do the rest of this pudding. Okay, I probably could have used a little bit more pudding. Again, I used about, I think this is probably makes just a little over 4 cups. Basically, if you were to go buy the larger size boxes of like the Cook and Serve vanilla pudding, I would probably get 2 of those to use for this. So that'll give you an idea of how much pudding. Again, this is double the pudding recipe part that is on the back of the Nabisco vanilla wafers box. Okay, get all of that in there. Okay, now more berries. I'm actually gonna save, I think, some blueberries to kind of garnish the top to make it look all nice and pretty. All right, there we go, and we got our layers. All right, and now for my husband's favorite part, the Cool Whip. Again, if you prefer to make your own whip topping, that's totally fine. Kudos to you. I've done it before, but today I'm feeling lazy. Okay, and then we're gonna use this entire container or however much you like, and we're just gonna cover all of this. Right, look at that. Oh, I love seeing all of those beautiful layers. And now I'm just gonna garnish a little bit for some extra with some blueberries. And there we go. So check it out, a nice little garnish. That is something extra you do not have to do. But we are done. Now I'm just gonna put this in the fridge, probably just put either tinfoil or saran wrap over it. And all of these wonderful juices are gonna soak into that pound cake, and it's getting nice and moist, and it's gonna be delicious. You just take a spoon and start scooping out. So now I have to hide this from my family and keep them out of it, which should be fun, but my husband can usually be a good boy when it comes to this, but we will see. All right, so there you go, a wonderful summery dessert. Again, perfect for those summery picnics, 4th of July, going over to someone's house for supper, or just to make your family happy. My husband is always thrilled whenever I make this. So comment below if you actually try out this recipe, I would love to know. And this is the beauty of freshly milled wheat bread. I mean, it's just flour, y'all. I mean, it's nothing, once you know what wheats to use and everything, you can make anything. Whatever you use flour for, that's what you can use with your freshly milled grains, and probably no one's gonna know. It's just gonna be delicious and they're gonna love it. So this is also a great idea if you're trying to find out how to sneak in more healthy foods to your family. This is an excellent way. Freshly milled pound cake, the berries, the pudding if you made it yourself, the whipping cream if you made it yourself. You can make this a much healthier version where it's still delicious. No child has ever denied it. And it's a big hit with your family. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe below if you want future videos about freshly milled grains, more recipes, all of those things. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. One thing I would like to say, while I was recording this video, I do have to put my phone on airplane mode because I record on it, so I'm not getting calls or anything. And lo and behold, my family was trying to call me, letting me know that my grandmother had passed away. We knew that this was coming up. She has been sick for a while with vascular dementia and has slowly been just going downhill. But she was a woman who loved to cook and inspires me every day to make wonderful, delicious meals for my family because she did the same for us. No one could cook like Mema, and I'm so thankful for her to inspire all of us that you can love your family through food. I love you, Mema, and we will miss you, and because of you, this video is dedicated to you.